Learn, because you're on your way up. And the things that tempt people to fall, you and I are not free from that temptation.
I done caught a case now, feds wanna change now. I be feeling like I can't even make a play now. Believe my nigga did now, they shot him in the city. I believe he go scram when he died on his man. No. If it did, he was a legend. Everything he was, you made it happen. You made it happen. You made it happen. We want for you, nigga. You make it happen. You made it happen. I want you. I need you. I need you love. I miss you too. I need you love. I need you love. I need you love. Got suspended, I had in the mood of cold. I had a pull up on Gucci in a rover. Got me feeling the sun and I know I'm staying over. Sliding your daughter when she got older. The things that your daddy do, you the colder. Be feeling so wrong and I should've told ya. Can't believe this nigga down on my own now, yeah. Niggas talking that shit, I'm be patient. But then the fuck they never really worked, man. But everything I put in, I deserved it. I just been through a lot of shit, got a purpose, yeah. The whole world that he did that, yeah. Think my trainers only give me best. But you let me go through, don't feel so lucky. Tell me what she said, I need you, love. I need you, love. I need you, too. Yeah. I need you.
All right, thank you for tuning in to Straight Talk. I hope you can hear me real good. Hope you hear me real good. I'm excited about what's happening tonight. We have some awesome philanthropists and some great people on that's going to talk tonight. I am Amir May Sr., Bishop Amir May Sr., the founder of the nonprofit organization Strong Overcomer Unique Leaders Soul Train in the city of Charlotte, North Carolina. Also a native of South Haven, Michigan. Most of you probably know me formerly from being an All-State, All-American athlete and pastoring also in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Tonight we have some special guests on Straight Talk. We want to make sure we are very respectful. We want to make sure we communicate clearly, and everyone has a right to their opinion. That's why we live in America and we have freedom of speech. And we want to respect each other as that. I have special guests on tonight. You're going to hear from many different people. Of course, my friend and brother, Sheriff Gary McFadden will be on, and Attorney Suzanna will be on as well, and a few other guests. So I'm excited about what's going to happen tonight and what's going to take place. And our first segment, real quickly, we're going to add Sheriff McFadden on. He's the Mecklenburg County Sheriff of Mecklenburg County, and we're going to add him on because he's one that can help us today. He's going to help us, and I hope I can get him on. Sheriff, are you there? Can you hear me? I lost him. And then we're going to have Attorney Suzanna on. Attorney Suzanna's an awesome attorney there in Michigan that's representing Mr. Scotty Shaver. And a lot of people have a lot of opinion. And some people, opinions are a lot. You just have to do what your heart feels right. Let me read these scriptures for you so you'll know. Because some people say, well, how can a preacher get involved in such a case like this? Well, you have to understand the civil rights movement start from the pulpit. The Black Lives Matter is the only black civil rights movement that did not start from black clergy in particular. So 2 scriptures I'm going to give you, and then we're going to move on. Proverbs 31, verse 1 through 9 says, verse 8, and I say, speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor. Okay? And then Matthew 25, verse 36 says, naked and you clothed me, and I was sick. When I was naked, you didn't clothe me. When I was sick, you didn't visit me. And then it says, when I was in prison, and you came not unto me. So these are mandates in the gospel, even in Matthew's and then Proverbs, where Solomon writes. So we want to talk today. We're going to try to get to Sheriff McFadden on. We're not sure what happened. We're going to make sure he get on, and so we can move forward. And we got some telling news here. We got some things that's just, it's really, we're just going to look at the evidence tonight. We're not going to demonize the deceased. Respect to the deceased, their families, they lost a loved one. And of course, a lot of people will be upset, and some of them have to relive this, but we want to understand no one should have to suffer in any kind of confinement if they are innocent. If they are innocent. And we have to look at the evidence to really describe if one is innocent or not. So we are so excited about tonight. Respectfully, I love the Shaver family. Contrary to popular belief, many people in the courtroom said some heinous things that I feel was not true. We are in West Michigan, particularly in South Haven, have a beautiful community. The Shaver is a large family, and the Cunninghams were a large family, the Whitfields, the Wilkins, and the Mosleys. We are all families that lived amongst each other within the 10-block radius, and there was no bad families. All right, you got bad individuals in every race, creed, and every family, but to say the Shavers are bad people is a lie. I stayed at Brenda Shaver's house when I was a kid, and played basketball with her sons and also her family. So I just want to dispel those lies, because we come from a smaller town, a lot of rumors, a lot of people say a lot of things that are necessarily true. And what people don't know, they make up. And so tonight we're going to talk about some truths tonight. And the Bible says you should know the truth, and the truth shall what? Set you free. So Sheriff McFadden is going to come on, then we're going to have Attorney come on, and we thank you for these guests. Sheriff, thank you for tuning in and being with us tonight.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here, and hope I can help. But I'm glad an attorney coming on to straighten all my mess out that I'm going to cause.
Can you hear? Can you turn your volume up?
Let me see here.
Use the government mic. You have a good mic.
Is that better? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Wait. Let me try this.
Okay.
Maybe.
No, I lost you.
Yeah, you lost me somewhere.
Okay,
along
they
the
can
way.
hear you fine. So go ahead. Okay, go ahead, Sheriff. Sheriff, they can hear you fine.
I can barely hear you though, but I don't know why.
Okay. Well, just keep talking, and they can hear you, and we'll work it out.
Can y'all hear me better?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. So,
Sheriff, tell them who you are. First of all, tell them about your TV show. Oh yeah, I missed you in church too Sunday. But tell them about your TV show. Tell them about your TV show and what you used to do prior to your position now. From them moving on.
Right. So I joined the Charlotte Police Department in 1982. In 3 years, I made detective. So I went from being a guy on the street to a detective. And in 1990, they assigned me to the homicide unit. And so I was in a homicide unit for 21 years, almost 22 years working homicide cases. So when people say, how many cases have you worked? Not cleared. I want to make sure you understand it's not cleared all, but I have worked 835 murder cases in my career. Now, here's the number that I like to say. There is not a lawyer in Charlotte has ever won a case against me when it comes to homicide investigation. Matter of fact, there's not a lawyer in the United States has ever won a case against me or found a not guilty plea when they're coming against me in homicide. And so when we talk about this, a lot of things you're going to hear people say and what you should do, what you shouldn't do. I'm telling you from my experience, what I have seen and how it works. And so I was glad to come here and just explain some of this. And I know it's going to sound, well, that's not what my grandmother said. That's not what my cousin said. Well, my cousin took criminal justice. I got all of that. And then you're going to have a lawyer say, well, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. Do you need to read your rights and your rights not to be read? I got all of that. But The bottom line is that how do you win a case and how do you get a conviction? And that is the bottom line. And now it's in a different field for me because I have 1,500 men and women housed inside my detention center. Now I'm trying to get criminal justice reform. Now I'm trying to find better housing. Now I'm trying to find re-entry. So some of the very people, kids and grandkids that I've seen along my way are inside my detention center. And actually one guy came to me the other day. He has been in the system and he's back in the system and he has my name on some of his documents. And so I think it's important for us to know these things and be better educated. And that's where we, but because I didn't have any not guilty pleas, ID Discovery sent a guy named Gino to find me in 2014. And we created this TV series called I Am Homicide. And it went for about 3 seasons. And then we had this other series called Homicide City. And we just did another one called Bad Henry after that. And 2020 did something with me about 3 weeks ago. They're going to have your well-known black serial killer. A lot of people didn't think that African-American was serial killers. But after this case happened in 1992, they started going back, looking at some cases. And we believe that this case that transformed FBI to look at cases in a different light and not just say Europeans or white America are doing serial killing. So that's pretty much it. I spent 30 years with CMPD, retired in 2011. They kept me for an additional 7 years. So I stayed there until 2018. 2018, I became the sheriff of Mecklenburg County. So that's about it.
Sheriff, we thank you for those. Thank you for your expertise, and thank you for representing the community and law enforcement. We need more people to represent us justifiably in the criminal justice field. Some of your, when you were a detective, I don't know if you can disclose or not, but when you were a detective, do detectives have certain techniques to apply pressure on individuals to get a confession?
There are techniques out there to and here's what we are trained, how to get a person to talk, how to get a person to tell you something that he hasn't even told his wife, mother, father, children, brothers. And that's a gift. A lot of people don't have that gift. And this is when you're talking about pushing somebody up against the wall or doing something, beating somebody in the room. And that's not ever my tactics. I can honestly say that has never been my tactics, have never been into my tactics. My tactics is to get you to talk, how to get you to talk, and what to say. The biggest issue that we have is that we say that we know our rights, but we don't. People say that anytime an officer talks to you, he needs to read you your rights. That is simply not true. That is not true. Let me say that for the third time. That is not true. But then techniques to make people talk is this. A perfect technique is this on the streets. Hey, Gary, let me give you an example. Officer walks up to you and said, hey, we got a call that we saw a guy matching your description, wearing a baseball cap, a pair of jeans, and some Air Force One coming out of the house. Now, is that a question? No, that's not a question. So once you don't take that bait, I'm going to continue to talk to you. And, I tell people if he says, okay, but what happens is America makes you, because of how we are at this point, anytime you come into a contact with an officer, you want to voice your opinion, you want to give your statement, you want to talk, and that is not always good. It's not always good. So the techniques is to get you to talk. Wow.
So there are techniques out there to get people to talk. And have you ever found in your career that people will embellish their story or create a story to get them out? If I'm a lifer, or if I'm in trouble, if I'm scared, is it possible that people can say things that's not true to get themselves out of trouble?
Absolutely. A lot of time, we did call them snitch, confidential informants, and all of that. I only had one person in 27 years to ever come to court and testify for me, and he was inside the jail or detention center, but it bothered him that what happened to his friend. But a lot of times that detectives would take that information and use that information not being supported by physical evidence. That's key. If we ever come back to this forum, and I wish we did, if I can take Trayvon Martin's case and give it to you all, and we come back and do a session, here's what happened. It was not, the officer was guilty of what he did, but when we got so excited to talk about it, we embellished what he did and how he was doing it and what he did. And so then what happens? You don't have credibility as a witness. And then the federal government and the state, and you know, we can talk about this later, they used a sentence that would not allow you to be a witness, and simply saying, if I don't have witnesses, I don't have a case. And that's where we fail in America. Because we dislike law enforcement so much, we will say, well, when he was on the ground, he kicked him in the head and then he stomped on his head. Maybe if he fell on the ground and the guy kneeled on him or do something else, say it like that. But when you said he kicked him, because the body camera that we have on our chest or in the car is going to show a different side of it. But yes, back to your original question, there are people inside that embellish to get out, and they do.
Wow. We know that, even looking at the so many people we represent in court and just been trying to be them credible witness. But and that was very interesting that you said that some people will lie to get out. Is that really integral when a police officer or prosecutor or any type of law enforcement will utilize a testimony knowing that it may be fabricated, fiction? Are we so gun-ho or on a conviction we don't even care about the lives that we destroyed? Can a witness that, for example, can a witness that was purged, if you was charged with perjury, would a law enforcement still utilize you? If you was charged with perjury, could you still be a main witness?
If he doesn't go to a city and doesn't know anything about this person is used into another city, you know, they can transit, go to Florida, go to, as we say, up top, New York, someplace, Detroit, and then testify in the case, and we know nothing about him. I always tell my guys, find out who this guy is. Find out who this guy is. And I'll tell you, a guy that I did use one time, he never came to court. Nobody believed his story but me. And, you know, but physical evidence matched his story. And so that's where we fail. Does the physical evidence match the story of our witness? And that's what our men and women need to be doing when they are incarcerated, not only going on what the other witnesses says, going on what the physical evidence versus their statement versus your statement. And that's what they need to look at.
That is powerful. The physical evidence versus one statement. The physical, we had a case in Michigan where it was deemed, originally it was deemed accidental, then it was transferred over to homicide, where 4 individuals that I personally knew that was charged with murder, but 2 people confessed that they hit the individual with a car. And there was a story that said they dragged him and they beat him. But the reason I'm on even allowed to try to share, embellish it, to inform people, it was difficult to believe, because if you was to receive a beating, number one, there was no bruises to the face, there were no bruises to the body, and everybody said it was beaten. It was only tire tracks and sort of roadkill. So it's amazing how you say that we have to look at the evidence, not look at the race, not look at the person, individual. We have a propensity to look at people's past, but if you have a bad past, if you had a dope case or whatever you had, that doesn't mean you committed murder. So I appreciate you bringing that out, to saying you have to look at the evidence.
The evidence should support your statement. The evidence should support your statement. That evidence, if you got a time, you got a clock, you got a videotape, it should support the statement of the guy. And something else that we could do this, and I want to say, we could do this again some other time, but here's what we also have. When you're talking about the physical evidence that didn't match on that incident, here's what we don't understand either. There is a difference between a coroner a coroner and a forensic pathologist. A forensic pathologist is a medical examiner. There's a difference. A coroner could not have one day of medical sense about what they're doing. They are elected officials. A coroner. A forensic is the person that you need to look at every homicide case when you're talking about trying to fit the evidence and the statements to determine what it is. A coroner simply is an elected official that can give you the time of death and maybe the manner of death if it's a gunshot wound or something like that. But when you're talking about forensic pathology, you need to have the medical examiner who is a forensic pathologist. That is important. A coroner don't have the expertise of a forensic pathologist.
Wow, that's good to know, and that was very informative. The scripture says, "My people are destroyed for a lack of epignosis, which is knowledge," and that's very important to know those two distinctive roles for that. Have you did a lot of cold case murders? On cold case murders, is that tedious? Do you have to exhume bodies? Or what do you have to do for cold case?
Yes, sir. You can do all of that. Absolutely. And I thank you, my brother. You must be looking at my resume. I actually did. I actually did a lot of cold cases, but then I actually taught a cold case investigation course at a couple of local colleges around the state of how you should investigate it, how you should approach it, and all. And it is a very tedious thing, but I will say this, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department has one of the top cold case squads in the country. We'll probably came in second to none to a couple other places, but we have been featured, honored, and people have come to see what we need to do. But we have an excellent cold case unit here that is still up and running. And when you leave homicide and you are retiring and you want to come back and work, that's where you would work. Excellent place to work right now. Excellent place.
Wow. So when does it warrant to exhume bodies? Did you guys have to exhume bodies and anything like that?
We don't do it as much as people think that we do, because our forensic pathologist is here, and so instead of have the coroner do his thing and then we bury somebody, our forensic pathologists do a absolutely wonderful job here. And the person who was doing it for probably 30 years retired, came back, and he's working part-time at the facility now. And the person who took his place is about to retire now. And so we don't have to do too much removing bodies from earth, but we do occasionally.
Well, Sheriff, I enjoyed your information. It was very informative. We're going to do another workshop at the church, and I'm sure a lot of people was blessed by your information. Tell your beautiful wife hello, and we thank you for tuning in. We thank you for tuning in tonight. God bless.
Thank you. All right, always here for you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We're so excited, thankful for Sheriff McFadden. I told you he investigated over 840 something murders, and you heard it today, the difference between a coroner and a pathologist. Oh man, this is a wonderful information. You need to share this. Everybody knows, everybody in South Haven, if you sneeze, they can tell you what type of sneeze it was. So tag people's names, share their name. We are a wonderful community in South Haven, in spite of, I'm telling you, I am a zone boy. I travel all over the world, minister the word, but I never forget that I'm a zone boy and my 7-4 brothers. I love you to life. And I love my community. I love Elkinberg Park. I'm a Cable Street boy and a Humphrey Street boy. So I love my community. And now the Lord has blessed me with a wonderful platform, over 15,000 followers, and travel all over the world speaking, life coaching, preaching. I decided to do this. It took courage, it took testicle fortitude. Everybody, you can't please everybody. I ain't never worried about pleasing everybody. God has favored me. And we're going to go on a little more. In this segment, we have the attorney, Suzanna. She's a wonderful spirited individual. I just met her, spoke over the phone a couple of times, and I'm very grateful for her taking out her time. She is representing Mr. Scotty Shaver. And Suzanna, I know this is a tedious time, and you always have to read and study law. But I have an affidavit here from Mr. Thomas, Investigative Service from Comstock Park. And it says, "Dear Scotty, I have enclosed a copy of the affidavit. Scotty is Scotty Shaver, the accused individual that was charged or convicted of murder. I prepared for Dr. Miller to sign. He did not do so at this time. After several phone calls with him, he informed me of several factors that compromised proceeding further his signing. He said his proper name is David Jerome Miller, not David Carl Miller. That is an easy fix. He informed me that if a death certificate is to be changed, a report must accompany this change and who signed it. He also stated that he was never involved in completing either death certificate. All right, either death certificate. And I'm going to explain that. He did not sign the original affidavit because his son, a lawyer, does not want him involved. It smell a rat and it sound like it stinks. I prepared to make a formal statement for those facts. This is Thomas Bariza. He's a Thomas Investigating Services. I have with me some confidential paperwork that says 2 death certificates. One, Attorney Suzanna, it states, I have it here, it states here, it is public information, it states that it was, the original was an accident. 1980 was ruled an accident. And then it was ruled as a homicide. But we have an affidavit from Thomas Investigating Services that's saying he didn't sign it, nor did he change it. And if there is to be a change, there has to be proper court proceedings to change it. So the question is, did Casper the Ghost sign this and change this, or what really happened?
Well, good evening, and thank you for having me on your show. Let me give you a little background about myself. I've been doing criminal defense and practicing criminal law, probably about 32 years. And I currently represent Scotty Shaver. He came to me, it was years after his conviction and his appeals through the state court system. He then filed a federal habeas petition, is what it's called. And during the course of that filing, Mr. Bariza, who's the investigator, offered his services to the family to investigate what happened in this case. And he discovered that there were 2 death certificates, which is most unusual. And the reason I say that is a death certificate has to be signed by the forensic pathologist. In this case, originally, Dr. Millard was given information. He filled out the death certificate and said the manner and cause of death was an accident. And Dr. Millard's original certificate that you have was signed by Dr. Millard. His signature is on there. Some time later, this was, I guess, a cold case in terms of the investigation as to what happened to the victim. And a state police officer was assigned to, I guess, open this up. And ultimately, from my understanding, is she basically got one of the witnesses to change her story. And I think the sheriff was very helpful in his explanation about how law enforcement is trained to get confessions out of people, even if those confessions aren't true. And we've seen a number of cases now around the country where people's convictions for whether it's a homicide or a sexual assault or armed robbery, whatever the conviction is, you've seen now one too many cases where the people who implicated the defendant in any case, come forward and said, I was coerced, or I was threatened, or I lied. And people have done 20, 30 years of time in prison for crimes they did not commit. Okay. And so in this case, the investigator from the state police reopened this case years later. Okay. And was able to convince one of the witnesses to change their statements. And my understanding is there were some threats made that if that didn't happen, the state would move to take away her young children, all sorts of drama, if you will, in the background, not having anything to do with the facts of this case. Okay. And there were several instances in this case where this witness failed a polygraph. She was caught lying on the stand, but the case continued because this police officer, and I don't know how she did it, but she was able to convince the medical examiner's office to change the death certificate from accident to homicide. Now, what is troubling for me in this case is the fact that the medical examiner at the time was Dr. Millard, okay, for the county of Van Buren. And however, Dr. Millard used outside forensic pathologists to examine the body, look at the reports, and then give him a report that says, here's why I think it's accident, homicide, suicide, or whatever the cause of death may be. In this particular case, the Dr. Palucki went back and looked at, and he's the forensic pathologist that was on contract with the medical examiner's office. He looked at this case over again, and apparently the information that was provided to him by the state police officer that was investigating, and he switched the cause of death and manner of death from accident to homicide. Now,
let me ask this question. Was there any, at the pathologist evidence, was there any evidence stating that this was a homicide? Not testimony, but was there evidence?
You mean
because
physical
in the
evidence?
police report, there was no bruises to the face.
No, there was no.
So if there's no bruises to the face, where is this crap coming from?
It's coming from this one particular witness who was coerced, bullied, threatened. I'm not sure what word you want to use, to change her testimony. Now, what becomes significant in this case is the fact that having done that, Dr. Palucki, who was hired to examine the body again and the reports and things of that nature, the procedure was he was to prepare reports, right? And I think one of your viewers, listeners asked the question about whether the proper procedure was followed. The proper procedure was not followed because Investigator Bariza could not find in the county records where they keep this information the reports associated with the change to the death certificate. They're missing from the county records, right? And if you look at the second death certificate, it is an electronic signature of Dr. Millard. Dr. Millard didn't go anywhere. He was still there. He didn't retire until years later. So he told Investigator Bariza, I never saw this certificate, this second one with my electronic signature. I never signed it. I never saw it. I never got any reports. I don't know how this happened. He said the only one I'm aware of is the original death certificate that he signed, the first one. And so if you look at the second death certificate, you will see the name of an official from the county. And I believe I'm going through my, it says Shirley Jackson, okay,
Right.
is the person who changed the death certificate. She's the one. I don't know if she signed it or if she entered it in the system or made the change. I have, since coming into the case for the last couple years, I have tried every which way to get the state to explain, not just to us, but to the court, how was this done? Because in the documentation that they filed in response to my motions and my challenges on this issue, they can't even get their story straight. One version is, well, Dr. Millard authorized the change. Dr. Palucki said he couldn't make the change himself because he just examined it. He can't sign the death certificate. He doesn't have that authority. Dr. Millard says, no, I didn't sign. I didn't see this. I don't know anything about it. That's point number one. In a later argument that they make in their pleadings, they said, well, even if Dr. Millard didn't sign it, someone with authority signed it. Who?
So, and this is, and let me say this, and I'm going to move on. Everybody needs to really, that's from my community, because this involved our entire community. And I'm going to say something I may not, everybody may not accept. Even the witness was coerced. And I'm not going to demonize the witness because she was a female and her kids were threatened, and the kids happen to be relatives of mine. So I'm in the middle. It takes courage to do what I'm doing tonight. But I don't want anyone, family or not, to ever have to sit in a prison for life for something they didn't do. And particularly, I don't care if it was my sister, my brother. If you lie on the stand and you're charged with perjury, how can you be the main witness and send 4 people to literally a death sentence, rotting in prison? That's not right. And we need to tag. And I did this show. I'm really not worried about the numbers as much tonight, because all we have to do is tag the YouTube link, get 100 people to tag the YouTube link to every congressman, to Joe Biden's office, to the Congress, to Capitol Hill, because obviously Paw Paw, Mississippi is not going to happen. It's a hanging party for them. And I know it's Paw Paw, Michigan, but the case looks like it's in Mississippi, in the backwoods of Mississippi. And this should not be. And people, if it was my family, I would want somebody to cry out. There's no way in the world, that you can have somebody to say Casper the Ghost signed the death certificate and it was changed. And so what? Just go on with your life. Attorney, that's just, so as an attorney, I know it's challenging for you because you're going against an entire system that wants to just turn the other cheek. But we have the power of the voice. We have the power of social media. And it's imperative for us to link up. And I don't care if it was 4 white people that was murdered, or Asian. I don't care about race. No one should have to sit in prison and they're innocent. And I visit Scotty as a friend. We've been knowing each other since the 4 years old. And I say, Scotty, either take the plea because you're guilty or you're a fool. You must have didn't do it. If you didn't do it, you're not going to take the plea. But take the plea. He said, I did not do it. Now, what man in the right world, if they killed somebody or murdered somebody, would not take a plea of 12 years? They would have been out. And a lot of people are gangsters and naysayers. A lot of people have a lot to say until they're in that posture position. But it's hard to say you did something that you did not do. And so for them, it just don't make sense. And most preachers, we should go, because the scripture tells us to be a voice for those that have no voice. And so anybody with reason and can smell, as the attorney, we should support her, support Scotty, Chevy, Ed, and Ivy. anybody can see that the death certificate was changed. And again, who changed it?
Right.
And so I don't know
And on whose
where do we
authority?
go from here?
Well, one thing I do want to bring up to your attention, Bishop, and you said that you're related to the
Right.
children here. Okay. Well, the main witness, Adrian, I think Burnette is her name.
Yes.
Okay. She ran into an attorney that was involved in this case at the courthouse. I think they ran into each other in the hallway and went up to this attorney and said, look, they coerced me, they threatened me, they pressured me. I can't live with what I did, but I want you to know that. So this attorney wrote, this is all before I became involved, wrote to Scotty and told him that. And I reached out to that attorney, but she says now she can't locate the main witness against Scotty. And what's interesting to me in reading the ruling by Judge, their name right, Judge Kathleen Brickley.
Right.
She was not the trial judge. She was also not the judge that ruled on Scotty's first post conviction, post appeal motion, what's called a 6500 motion. She, I think, is new to the bench. But what's interesting is that she avoids the merits of the arguments. I'll just say that. Okay. And focuses in on procedural nonsense. Okay. Well, you've got to meet this hurdle, or you've got to do this, or you've got to do that. She never says, in her opinion, any of the issues that I raised and argued on behalf of Scotty in terms of having the state show how all this was done. Okay. I wasn't asking really for a new trial. I was asking for an evidentiary hearing to call all these people in. Dr. Millard, Kathy Johnson, the clerk at the death certificate office. I'm not sure what it's called in Van Buren County. Investigator Bariza, Dr. Palucki, Diane Oppenheim, who's the state police investigator that looked at this case again, to have all of them come in, testify under oath, and explain themselves. If there is a legitimate reason, basis, they followed the law, then so be it. But this judge would not even give me the opportunity to present this to her. She basically made a determination that procedure or form was more important than substance.
Wow.
Especially since the state of Michigan's response was everywhere. Inconsistent. And I pointed out to you the major inconsistency. First, they're arguing, of course, Dr. Millard authorized the change. Then a few pages later on, they're saying, well, we believe he did, but even if he didn't, someone with authority did. So they don't even want to tell me who did this. And no one wants to tell Investigator Bariza at the clerk's office what went on. And I guess the biggest question is, where are the reports that justified the change? How come they're not with the death certificate file? Does that make sense to anybody? Not to me. And
Wow.
why would you have an electronic signature when Dr. Millard was still working as the medical examiner? He didn't retire. And, and then you add the extra layer of Dr. Millard saying, I didn't make any change. I didn't authorize any change. I never saw any of this. But he, of course, on the advice of his son, who's an attorney, refused to sign the affidavit for, I don't know, potential legal exposure, if you will. I'm not sure. I don't do civil litigation, but you know, all these folks are here. They're alive, they're in town, or they can be found. And I truly believe that Scotty deserves, at a minimum, this hearing, at a minimum.
Right.
And I'm going to keep fighting until we get one.
Well, you have support and support from all the country now that we're involved. We're going to take this to Capitol Hill. We have several House representatives and congressmen already taking a look at it, because it's obviously, it really should be thrown out of court, and they should all be released just by the evidence. And I'm going by the sheriff that has been a detective over 890 cases. He said you can't look at the testimonies all the time. You have to look at the evidence.
Right.
And the evidence, there was one testimony stating one thing, and then there was evidence of the examination of the body where there was no bruises or blows to the face. If you would punch somebody in the face, particularly Caucasian individual, you would see the bruises upon their face, and there were no bruises. And so that story would not line up with the testator that testified in this case.
Well, the other thing is the forensic examination originally that Dr. Millard reviewed and then signed the death certificate. The injuries were consistent with someone running over this young lady, not with being beaten and dragged and all of that. That's the problem. And yet the second death certificate, there's nothing to contradict or refute that. Or if there is, we have never seen it.
Wow.
And that's what belongs with the death certificate. There is a Michigan statute, and I believe I quoted that. It says, and I'm quoting from my filing, that this second death certificate constitutes what's called a structural error in the proceeding, since death certificates are governed by MCL 52.202, and a signature is required by the medical examiner. That is state law. That's not something I created or am advocating for. That's what the statute requires. So when you don't have the medical examiner signing, but you have an electronic signature, that's a structural error. That second death certificate is a nullity. It's like it's like someone forging a birth certificate, a death certificate, anything, any, important document that's governed by either state or federal law. If someone commits to that document is no good. So based on what I was able to present to the court, clearly there's a problem here. And
so is there appeals that obviously will be denied at the local court in 36th Street? What is it, Van Buren? Is there Supreme Court status? Where can we get it to the Supreme Court, or possibly?
Well, the next place that I'm going to go is the Michigan Court of Appeals. You have to go up the ladder, if you will, and
Okay.
then the Court of Appeals grants it, then it'll go back to the trial court for further proceedings, which is the evidentiary hearing that's clearly needed in this case. If the Court of Appeals denies it, the next step is the Michigan Supreme Court. And again, they can send it back to the trial judge or deny it. Once all that's done in state court proceedings, the case will then move back to federal court.
Okay.
Because currently, Scotty's case in federal court is on what's called administrative closure or stay while I go through this process. Because this issue was not raised originally until I came aboard. And so the law requires, I know it gets complicated, you have to exhaust all these issues before you can go back to federal court. So that's where it will go ultimately.
So we got to get it to federal court to get the ruling before then. And before then, we need to support, we need to handle, apply pressure. We are in the day of social media and this kind of thing. The difference between great, good, and great is exposure. And I'm going to do all I can to allow this to happen. A lot of times people don't know pastors' assignments. And the scripture said, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Let me read the scriptures. Proverbs 31, verse 1 through 9. Speak up for those that cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor. Be a voice for those that have no voice. Obviously, Chevy, Scotty, and Ed and Ivy's voice has been taken away. And it's our job to be a voice for those that don't have a voice. Then Matthew's the synoptic gospel. Synoptic etymology teaches us is the similar. And Matthew's writing to the Jewish audience. And Jesus is telling Matthew and the disciples, he said, when I was hungry, you didn't feed me. When I was naked, you didn't clothe me. And he said, when I was in prison, you didn't visit me, which implies to us as clergy and people of the cloth, we are to be concerned about those that are in prison. All right, before we judge, the Bible says in Matthew 7th chapter, judge ye not unless you be judged. No one has the ability to judge a pastor because he's on here advocating for justice, not advocating for a certain denomination, reformation, or a certain race. We're looking at the evidence, and the evidence says this is not right. So, attorney, we thank you. We'll be in contact, and I appreciate you taking your time to get on, and we're going to support you, and we're going to take this all the way to Capitol Hill. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bishop.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are so glad for the sex. Now, next we're getting ready to hear. We're getting ready to hear from Scotty himself. We tightened it in, and Scotty, we're trying to work it out where you can hear the voice of some of the AKA Snoop and Scotty. I hope we can get them on here where you can hear, and then we're going to hear from the mother. If you all, let me just say this: if you all don't understand something or don't understand what we're doing, the best thing is to do is just pray and be quiet. How would you feel if it was your son, or if you was a mother? All right, Brenda has suffered long enough. I'm in overload because I love those that are incarcerated, but I love Brenda, and I especially love Mother Bennett Harrington, and her granddaughter is sitting there in life in prison, and I would love to see her free before Mother Harrington transitioned to heaven. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I don't care what anybody say or has to think. Those mothers and grandmothers suffered enough, and I think this is injustice. You heard the evidence. All right, Scotty, can you hear me?
Scotty.
Tanisha, turn. It's Brenda. Who is it? Turn your speaker down in the background. Turn and mute your phone in the background.
I gotta go home.
Hello?
Scotty, how you doing, man?
How you doing?
Everybody can hear you, man. Everybody can hear you, and the attorney is on, and we're supporting you. Man, I just want you to share your story, to stay strong, and tell us about that night. You know, we have went over it, but tell the audience they can hear you. We're on YouTube, and we're on Facebook Live. The family's on, and tell us a little bit about that night.
Well, clearly, I mean, from the evidence, it's clear to see that this was none but a car pedestrian accident from the get-go. Diane Oppenheimer of the Michigan State Police is the one who constructed this to be a so-called homicide. That's why it's evident that there's no evidence to support her theory or her case. Everything was based off what Agent Burnette said, the convicted person. So, I mean, I was a toxic just took place. That's it. All that beating and fighting and all that, it never took place, man. It never, not at all. If you look at, like you said, if you just follow the evidence, that she was so-called beat by 3 men and a woman, she would have had a busted nose, black eye, busted lip, or something along those lines. And don't none of that exist because it never happened. Eyewitnesses that night seen this lady walking down the street uninjured. She fell in the middle of the road. They got out to help her. And it came out during trial that she didn't have no injuries to her face as she was beaten by 3 men and a woman. So this is simply put, this is what we was framed, and that's that.
Well,
no evidence.
To coerce with your story, I have an affidavit here that said victim was walking in the parking lot, victim walking in the roadway, position of the body, blood spots on the road, investigate forensic medical examiner. 2 vehicles were observed leaving the parking lot together. Letitia Corinne Hollins, I don't know who that is, was driving a dark car who was behind Agent Burnette. Agent Burnette was driving a white car. However, in the report, Hollins' vehicle is not listed or identified. But obviously, Letitia Hollins hit the deceased and caused great bodily harm. So I'm not sure why that was not. It's so much in here to either have a retrial or immediately release or throw it out that it really doesn't make sense. So this is what we're doing. We're exposing what's took place, and we want the truth. As the detective said, we want to look at the evidence. So if there's 2 cars that hit this young lady, where did this come from?
Not to cut you off.
Go ahead.
See, the state used Letitia Hollins as they witnessed the first trial. And then when she testified that this lady wasn't injured and didn't corroborate their theory of the case, they didn't use her the second trial because Letitia Hollins testified before she left their bar that night, she pushed the lady off her car because the lady was drunk, laying all over her car. And when she pushed off her car, she took off walking down the highway. So that totally contradicts this big fight, this big beat down, this theory of her being put in another car. All that is contradicted based on her testimony. They used her the first trial as a state's witness. In the second trial, they didn't use it because she didn't line up with their theory of the case. So that it was evidence, consistent scientific evidence that her car was one of the cars that also struck the lady leaving the bar that night. There were several cars that hit this lady leaving the bar that wasn't even involved in the case because they didn't fit the prosecution theory of what they wanted their case to be.
And that's right. And then the detective just told us they have tools and they have ways to coerce people to say things that's not necessarily true. And the attorney just stated that the witness kids when everything was threatened, and and the stories would change. And so what we're saying to you is stay strong. I want to call you Snoop to make you feel comfortable. Stay strong, Snoop. This is a process. It's not over. You will not die in prison. We're praying. And we're going to take this to Capitol Hill. We're going to make some noise. We got some big people watching it. They couldn't get on tonight, but we're going to get this done. So the question is that I would like to mention to you is, how did the death certificate get changed?
Well, that's what we've been trying to find out, because everybody whose name is on there and supposedly was involved say they wasn't involved. So that's what we want to know, who forged these death certificates, because them was key into getting us charged. And it was amended in 2009. If you read the top of it, it was amended in 2009, but don't nobody know who did it. And in the state of Michigan, in order for you to amend anything in the county clerk's office or amend a death certificate, it got to be a report as to why this is being changed. No, none of that exists because there's no evidence for this case at all, because it didn't happen. It was not no murder at all. It was a simple pedestrian car accident, and that's why the evidence don't add up, because none of this never happened. There's no physical evidence. There's no DNA. No, none of that, because what they say happened did not happen. They coerced Adrian into giving a statement in which she changed 20 times. In the course of their investigation, they started leading her with stuff to construct their case. That's why there's no evidence. That's why the death certificate is fake, because they constructed it the way that they wanted it to be. Diane Oppenheimer of the Michigan State Police is behind all this.
Wow. All right, we're going to look to. I have another affidavit from Nicole Dunfield, attorney at law, a letter to Chevrolet Gill saying, I hope this letter finds you where I received your letter, and I'm sorry to hear never received my last correspondence. On June 15, 2015, at approximately 10 a.m., Tracy Hughes approached me outside a courtroom in Varian County. She told me that she has changed her story. Something was weighing heavy on her heart. She stated that they made her say what she said, and that wasn't even hit. She wasn't even hit there. She's afraid to say something because now she has to commit perjury. I told her to weigh her options and report the officers to the superiors if she felt it was important enough. I want you to have this information in case you could help you get a new trial or on an appeal. If received any information, I will continue to pass it on. That was the statement I have right here. And this is enough evidence. We have enough paperwork. Forget due justice, due process. Due process is well over. We are in America. We are not in Mexico. We're not in a third world country. But this must be reopened, or they must be released immediately. And we have to get this in the congressman's, the senator's hands, and we have to get this in the federal court where they need to be immediately released. And the right voices are going to be on this. And this is the 2022. This is 2022. And it's a bunch of fallacy, I would say. And but we want you to stay strong. You have friends and family that's out here that is fighting for you. We even know that the testimony that was given from Mr. Trevier was false. We spoke about that. And so all the evidence, it's really nothing else to say. We just wanted to expose this.
You know that they didn't never even exhume the body. By this being a cold case, they never exhumed the body to corroborate their theory of the case. They just jumped up and believed what a perjurer said. That's not accepted in the medical community at all. You know, when you go from a case being called to reopen it, like when you're speaking on due process, they were supposed to re-exhume that body to test it to see that what they're being told is correct. They never did that. They did everything against protocol and procedures that you would assume that investigators with experience will follow.
Wow.
You know, and several people have come forward lately with affidavits saying that they were coerced and threatened to testify against us in the manner that they did. Even more than that, people in trial testified to the same thing. Everything that the things that they was testifying to was told to them by Diane Oppenheimer, not of their own knowledge or seeing it themselves. So the evidence was there, man. That that we was framed, that we should have never been charged from the get-go, but it happened. And I don't, to be honest, I don't believe I'm a guy in prison at all. I know God gonna work this out and bring me up out of this.
Yes, most definitely. And we want you to stay strong. We want you to stay strong. And we on this. You were in the passenger seat, and the evidence said that you were in the passenger. At first, they said you were driving, and then
that was her original statement. She tried to shift the blame to me as the driver of her car until she failed the polygraph. They found out that I wasn't driving, and then she was allowed to change her statement when she said that I forced her and told her to run this lady over. That only came about after she failed her polygraph test. She was allowed to change. Okay, well, you're right. I was driving, but Scotty forced me to do this. It was convenient for her, and that's what she was fed. Because if she don't say that, I'm not involved at all. Because you're right. I was only a passenger in the car.
Right, and
they had to have her say that in order to tie me in or get me involved in this case somehow.
I want to address the attorney. She's on. Attorney Suzanna, how could someone be a main witness charged with perjury and change their story 17 times?
Well, the law does not permit either side, whether the prosecution or the defense, to put on what's called perjured testimony. Okay. Now, polygraph exams, Bishop, in Michigan are not admissible in court proceedings because they have been determined not to be reliable. Like
Right.
DNA is reliable science, and things of that nature, fingerprints, things of that nature. That's why now there's such a big to do about facial recognition technology. That's a new area now that's up for debate. But what you can do when a witness changes their stories 10, 20 times, you impeach them.
Hold on. Scotty's got 1 minute. Scotty, we praying for you, man. We love you. And we're gonna continue with this, and just stay with me. Don't worry about nothing. You coming home. We ain't suffered too many losses. We got put out the quarterfinals by Attorney. So we've been winning all our life. We're gonna win this too. All right. I'm still the big fella with the ball in my hand. I got you. All right, man. Love you, man. All right. Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
So anyway, when you catch witnesses, whatever kind, whether it's a community person or a police officer or a doctor, whoever, if you catch them giving inconsistent statements, testimony. So in the prior proceeding, they said it was sun was shining. And today they're saying, no, it was pouring rain when this happened. So that's an inconsistent statement. So, because most people don't remember what they said, even when they make statements to the police. I've seen scenarios where the story changes as time goes on. So as a defense attorney, you have all this in front of you. So like if you're testifying, I would say, well, Bishop, didn't you say on this day the sun was shining? Now you're saying, well, no, it was pouring rain. So which is it? Was the sun shining or is it pouring rain? And the follow-up, of course, is, were you telling the truth then, or are you telling me the truth now? Which one is it? And so that puts a big question mark to a jury listening to this, say, wait a minute, this person can't get their story straight about anything. This person is not to be believed. And jurors are given that instruction. You don't have to believe anything anybody tells you. It doesn't matter if they have a JD or an MD or a PhD or RN or a police officer behind their name. They are to be treated just like anyone else. So if you want to believe them, you can believe them. If you don't want to believe them, you don't have to believe them. But as an attorney, you have to establish that groundwork to show the inconsistencies. One of the other things I will say in reading Scotty's case and talking to him and things of that nature, there were a lot of errors made by all the trial attorneys in the cases. Right. There was a lack of investigation on the death certificates. That should have been done long before now. That should have been looked at and questioned by all the attorneys. It wasn't just Scotty's attorney who didn't see it. All of them. I have no explanation as to why, but I mean, it was a big revelation for me because I didn't try the case, but that should have been a smoking gun to anybody looking at this to say, what is the problem here? How did we go from here to here? How did we go from, a written signature by the medical examiner to an electronic signature? Someone should have questioned Dr. Millard at that point, not what Investigative Bariza did years and years later, but someone should have questioned the doctor and said, what happened here? And I think all of this would have been discovered way back. But as you said, Bishop, it's not too late. And I believe in Scotty's innocence. And I'm going to keep fighting until I can bring him home. I've done this with some other cases and some other people where I just keep fighting. That's all I can do. I mean, I'm as an attorney, we are limited to, you know, in terms of the court system. I'm not a politician. I'm not a speaker, if you will, a talk show speaker person. I have to do what I have to do within the confines and bounds of the law and the legal system.
Right. So again, yes, thank you. We pray for your strength and to remain attentive and have the fortitude to continue to be altruistic enough to literally defend Scotty. I believe he's innocent. I'm also praying for the family of the deceased. They lost a mother. No one wants to lose a mother.
Right.
It's hard to lose a family member, but at the same time, another family has suffered a loss as well. No one wins. And I do believe it was according to the evidence, not because Scotty's a friend, because according to the evidence, they're innocent. And until somebody can prove otherwise, let the gates swing open so they can come home to their children and their families and enjoy themselves. So thank you for tuning in again. We'll be in touch, and whatever you need from me, just let me know.
Thank you, Bishop.
Thank you so much. All right, that was good. We're getting ready to go. But I want you all to do me a favor. Usually people donate to my show, but I don't want your donations. I don't want you to think I need your money. I don't. But I want you to do me a favor. I want you to cash out Scotty. You can do it by $ Scotty Shaver. Help for some of his defense. If 100 of us can give $100, that's $10,000 in defense. Take some of the pressure off his mother and his loved ones. Again, we that are from the zone, we are a beautiful families. We have beautiful families in the zone. Not killers, not rapists, not gang violence. You know, we represent our community, and we're from Elkinburg Park, we're from Fruit Street, we're from Humphrey Street, and we love each other. And anytime you see your brother in need, the Bible says, anytime you see your brother or sister in need, and shut up your bowels of compassion, how dwelleth the love of God in you? And then some people say, well, they do it for you. That's not how you live. You don't do righteousness based upon somebody have the propensity to do righteousness by you. I've been lied on, talked about, all that, but God has been pleased with my life. So I owe humanity, and as a philanthropist, I owe our community to speak out for those that have no voice. We're praying for Chevy, we're praying for Ivory, we're praying for Ed, and we're praying for Scotty. Let's continue to fight. And I don't know a lot of people what they're going to do. You know, the Bible talks about busybodies and messy people. They're going to wait to get off the line to watch it. They didn't want to know that they're going to support live. They're going to watch it. So when you do watch it, I don't want you to judge Scotty. I don't want you to judge the witness, or I don't want you to judge the deceased. I'm praying for the witness. A lot of people are demonizing her, but the truth of the matter is, when those doors shut up on you, and a detective comes in and coerce you and tell you they're going to take away your kids, you never know what you'll do either. So keep your mouth off the witness, and let's just go back to the evidence. Let's don't demonize the individuals and the personalities of other individuals. Let's look at the evidence, and let's judge them by the evidence. The evidence says if it don't fit, you must acquit. Thank you, and tune in. Follow me on all my social media platforms, Adamir May. We're going to go out, and I'm thankful. I'm praying for also the entire family, the Brenda Shaver and all that. And we're enjoying this night. It's going to be a blessed night. So I'll talk to you later, right? God bless. Let's go out one of my son's songs. We're going. It's Mary Jr. Y'all gonna get a download on all the tracks. I love y'all.
Because you on your way
up. Love. Come on, y'all show some Sahila love. Hashtag zone boys, zone girls. Come on. Don't forget where you come from.
Are not free from that temptation.
All right. Y'all listen.
I done caught the kids now. Feds wanna cheese now. I be feeling like I can't even make a play. I believe my nigga did. I just shot him in the city. I believe he go square when he died on his man. me. He was a legend.
My boy got some good music. Let a couple of them cuss words out of there, but that's my boy. I support. I love you all. Talk to you all later. Stay up. Y'all need to come down to Charlotte and enjoy some of this good weather. Peace.